It's time for our In the Turn interview, sponsored by Distinctive Auto Body. Born on September 9th, 1969, he grew up in Danbury, Connecticut. He started racing in go-karts before moving to car racing, driving in the 12 Hours of Sebring, the European Formula Ford Festival, and the Barber Dodge Pro Series. He arrived in NASCAR with a limited budget and started racing part-time, in finishing 6th in the 1996 Formula Opel Euro Series. He started full-time racing in 1998 and came in 3rd in that year's NASCAR Rookie of the Year award standings. In 1999, he won his first NASCAR-sanctioned race in the Winston West Series at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and earned his lone Cup Series win at Atlanta the following year in 2000. Unfortunately, his racing career was cut short by a career-ending practice injury in 2003. We are honored and lucky to be joined by Jerry Nadeau on the show here tonight. Jerry, it's a pleasure to have you. How are you?
Good, guys. How are you doing?
Excellent. So let's jump right into things and tell us, how did you catch the racing bug, Jerry?
Well, first off, I wouldn't say lucky. I mean, it was a lot of work. For sure I got lucky to get into NASCAR, but, I plugged away. My dad was a racer back in the Danbury days. Danbury, Connecticut, and literally every Saturday night we're at the Danbury Fairgrounds, watching my dad race, and he would unload. You would know that it was a bad night when you get home, and he starts the payloader. And the payloader, he basically chains up the chassis, the race car, and unloads it off the trailer. I mean, this was like every week. My dad, I loved my dad. Loved my dad to death. I think, he built his own stuff. I saw the hard work he was doing. I saw how tight our whole family was. I mean, we were renting from a house for like $200 a month in Danbury, and it was tough times. I mean, I used to have my school bus drop me off a mile away from my house because I was a little bit embarrassed back then. It's just we had it tough, and I don't think people realize that. And I'm proud that I'm very honored to make it as far as I did in racing, and I chose that as a profession. I mean, I literally left high school and just started getting rides, and I packed my bags, and I moved down south, and, lo and behold, I just literally clawed my way to the top. I had some really good people help me out. Tom Cotter and Todd Moore from North Carolina, who I still talk today, and it's a tough road. It's a lot different today, than back then. But, I think you notice from a lot of people that you see a lot of, rich kids coming in and people kind of buying their way into the top. And, I don't know if that's really the way it should be done, but, I think it's good. I still enjoy watching racing, even though I don't do it.
All right, so you won the $100,000 Skip Barber Big Scholarship. Wow, what a tongue twister. Tell us about that win.
That was cool. That's where, Skip Barber from the Ford. I did it the first year. I think I won like 18 out of the 20 races I did. Rookie of the Year. Didn't win the championship because we missed 4 races. But I got invited to do a scholarship runoff, and I basically was runner-up. I finished second to the guy who won it. Craig Hall was the the brother of IndyCar driver Dean Hall, and so he got the ride. And then the following year, I did 2 races, won them both, and then I got invited again to do the scholarship runoff. And this time, I won it, and I took it home, and I got a free season in the the Barbershop Pro Series, and I think it was '93. So, it was a step up from karting and running dirt cars and modifieds, and then I got introduced to Formula 4s, and I started doing a lot more road racing, which I love road racing. That was kind of my I was just a racer, just a hard racer. I'd think about it, go to bed, sleep thinking about it, and get up and keep going and plugging away. It's a lot different today, with having a family and kids. I'm not as nearly as into it as I used to be.
So in 1995, you made your Busch Series debut for TNG. Tell us a little bit about that step of your career.
Yeah, that was interesting. I in '95, I was doing some Barber Dodge races, and Tom Cotter, who I met in Florida at Sebring, I think I qualified on the pole in a barber stop race, and I mentioned on the interview that my ultimate goal is to get to NASCAR. And I think a lot of it was that because of my dad. My dad loved watching racing. He was a big Jeff Bodine, Dale Earnhardt fan. And I just I mentioned that over the intercom, and one of the guys picked it up, Tom Cotter, right here in I think it's Huntersville, North Carolina, and he met me, and we talked, and then I literally. I don't think he realized that I lived in Connecticut, and I literally, he said, "Hey, do you want to have lunch tomorrow?" And I said, "Sure," but I'm in Connecticut, and I'm talking to him, and he's in North Carolina, and the next morning I left way early, like 3:00 in the morning, and got here at 1:00, 10-hour ride, and met him for lunch, and drove back, and he's like, where do you live? I said, well, I live in Connecticut. He says, you got to be shitting me. You telling me you drove all the way down here just to have lunch, and then you're driving back? So I drove back, and I packed my bags, and he got me a place to live at, and I started working for him, driving show cars around, the Bobby Labonte show car, the Michael Waltrip show car, and then he first put that deal together. I think it was $200,000 to do 5 races in the Busch Series for TNG Racing. And, we made all our 5 races. We did well, but that was it. That was the end of my sponsorship deal. And that's when, I got a phone call to go to Europe and race some Formula Opel in '96 and then came back and just pursued, got into NASCAR hard.
All right, well, actually, speaking of racing in the Formula Opel, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, series in '96.
No, you're good.
All right. Running 13 races all over the continent, flying over and back from Charlotte on some weekends. Tell us what you remember about your time in Europe, and is it awesome?
Some of the best times as a racer, it was just cutthroat, hard racing, dive bombs. Those guys are really, really good. There's a lot of wrecks in those classes, and obviously I had a few. I think the hardest thing for me is I was not entitled to one team. I literally drove for every country in Formula Opel. I think I drove for 12 different teams in 13 races.
That's crazy.
So I didn't know what team I was driving for when I arrived, and I think a lot of it is Dan Partel, who ran the series, EFTA. He basically would pick and choose and find the least amount of money to do it, because I had no money. I had zero. It's like, hey, he would talk to the Russians and say, hey, would you guys, run a car for Jerry? Or he would talk to the Italians, the Europeans, or anybody. The Italian. I mean, the best team I think I had was the German teams. We ran really well with the Germans. We almost won a couple races. We had one race won, and they red flagged it, and they went by qualifying. I think it was Austria Ring. I mean, it was a great experience. I think, lo and behold, if I would have stayed into it, and I would have had backup. If I would have had somebody say, hey, you know what, I want to, help this kid, and but I didn't. I was kind of on my own and didn't really know anybody, and it was like in a foreign world when I was out there, but it was a great experience. I still talk to Dan Partel today, so it was a good time.
Cool. 1997, you moved to the Cup Series for Precision Products Racing, replacing Morgan Shepherd. Talk to us a little bit about your debut in the Cup Series and what stands out to you.
Well, I remember sleeping in his parking lot in my car. I think Richard heard of a rant. I mean, listened to a letter that Tom Cotter wrote, and Tom wrote a letter to all the race teams saying that, hey, I got a young kid here who's hungry, and I think you guys should give him a shot. And he gave it to every Cup team or NASCAR team that was existent. and one team answered, and it was Richard Jackson. They were kind of on their way out, though. You can tell they were slowly abandoning the NASCAR series, and I think they were in it for a couple years, and then they finally got out of it. But Richard was one hell of a guy. Well, probably one of the best owners I ever dealt with, just because he was so down to earth, such a nice guy. He had 9 Cup cars in the shop, and I was working there, sweeping the floors, spotting for Morgan Shepherd, and I finally I was there for like 2-3 months, making $240 a week, and I said, Richard, listen, you have 9 Cup cars. I said, what's it going to take to do an ARCA race or a sportsman race? I said, you tell me what I need to come up with. And he starts rocking in his chair, and he said, I tell you what, Jerry, I like you. He says, if you can come up with $15,000, I will put you in the race at Charlotte, which is 1 month away. So I had my plan. I called everybody but my mom and dad. I called everybody. I got $500 here. I got $300 here. I got $1,000 from. I got $5,000 from Busman, who was my sponsor in road racing when I was doing the Barbara Saab races. And we did the ARCA race. Never sat in an ARCA car. Never drove at Charlotte, and we were good. I think they had like 40 or 50 ARCA cars, and we qualified 6th, and we finished 4th. And then we had a good chance of winning that night. And Richard was really impressed. And this was just for one race. And he says, well, I tell you what, you did really good tonight. He says, how about we run Saturday night too? And I didn't have to pay anything. So we ran Saturday night, and we led the thing, and we should have won it, but we got kind of dive bombed the last lap by Gary Layton, and we got past going for the checkered. So all in all, it was a good start in my stock car racing career. And the next week, I was in the Cup car. I mean, literally, Morgan Shepherd left and went to Jasper, and Richard didn't have a driver, and he's like, "Hey, Jerry, you did a good job tonight. You want to race next week in Michigan?" So that's kind of how the career started.
Nice. And from there, you went to '98 to Elliott Marino Racing. What was it like running for Bill Elliott and Dan Marino?
Yeah, that's a interesting deal. I love Bill to death, Bill and Cindy, but I was more of a Dan Marino fan my whole life. I think I had his helmet, I had jerseys, I had all this stuff, and so I decided to take it, and it didn't. It lasted okay. We qualified outside pole at Sonoma. We ran good at some races, but then, lo and behold, I think that the sponsor, something wasn't working out right, and they let me go, and then they ran a couple guys in the car, and then finally they shut the team down. Heck, I used to change Chase's diaper at times, when wow. Chase was young. So wow. that was a cool time. Then once I got let go, I went to Melling Racing, and that's another team that I would have loved. If I had $15-20 million in my pocket, that's the kind of team that I would stay with in my career, because those guys were all down to earth. They were very good. I wouldn't say that they weren't the best team out there, but I think as a driver, I liked it when I was an underdog in a car that wasn't going to run good, that I made it run good. You know what I mean? That's how I felt as a driver. I mean, I felt like I could carry a car better, where today you got to know everything. You got to be so talented and engineer and you got to be with a good team. Where I was able to get with a team in 2000, so with Hendricks.
All right, so this is a question I need to know. I always wanted to know. So it was 1999. It was Bristol, and as a little guy I was a Dale Jarrett fan. I remember it was your debut, and I remember Dale Jarrett getting crashed across the track, and it ended up being the 36 car.
I remember that.
I was just wondering what happened there. Just the little kid in me needs to know.
Yeah, I know, and that's so cool. I don't know if I got in the back of Dale. I might have spun him, because I think I got docked, or I got put in the back because of that. and I feel really bad because Bristol. Let me tell you something. No, you don't know anything about racing until you race at Bristol. It is so fast, and everything happens so fast, and you're driving a bus. You're driving a 3,600-pound bus that hauls ass. I mean, you're doing, 15 seconds, with 43 other cars out there. Yeah. And if that's the one I'm thinking of, is that the one that I bumped him and I spun him and I got blocked, I got flagged? Or
they flagged you for a lap right after, and this was your debut. This was literally your first race right after Irvin said that he was out of the car.
And I think I was running really good.
Yeah,
I was in the.
You were
the
up
M&M's
there.
Car.
Yep, you were right up there. And then all of a sudden they went to commercial. And we come back and Dale Jarrett and like half the field was in the wall. And I'm like, what happened? They the 36 car.
Yeah.
So,
I was second year. I mean, I was with a good team, the M&M's car. Ernie Irvin got hurt, and I took over his ride and had some good runs. I remember that. Let me tell you something. The worst hit I ever had was at Darlington with the M&M's car. We were so fast that day. And we blew a right front tire, and I ended up in the hospital, and I don't even remember how. I don't remember how I
remember that wreck.
I mean, it was a big wreck coming off turn 2. I don't remember if it was a race or practice. I can't remember that. It was so long ago. But I mean, I didn't have a perfect career. I kind of took what I can took, and I didn't talk much. I was pretty quiet, and I did my best. I mean, I was honored to make it, so that's kind of how it went.
Excellent. In 2000, you went to run for Rick Hendrick, winning the season finale at Atlanta. I can remember that race because I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe I was home from school that day. It was a Monday. For whatever reason it was, vacation or sick or whatever.
This is the greatest fuel strategy ever.
You passed Ward Burton with 7 laps to go in that race. Tell us a little bit about that day, what you remember, and what sticks with you from your Cup Series win.
It was on a Monday. I don't remember. I thought we qualified really bad. Like, I think maybe 39th or 40th. I mean, we were... I don't remember, but we were just so connected ever since going to Hendrick at Lowe's, and I think Tony Furr was a really cool crew chief. I loved him, and I think we had a setup where the car was in yaw, where it was catching the right rear spoiler, and it was turning, and I can hang with it. I can do it, and I think the speeds we're running were so fast, and I felt so comfortable. I think we were pretty dominant that day. I think we led a lot of laps. Even the year after, we did the same thing. So, very cool moment. Pretty awesome to beat Dale, in his last race ever, until we lost him the next year. But it was definitely a big memory for me.
Well, we were talking about Rick Hendrick and your first race with him. Let's talk about your time running with Rick Hendrick.
Loved him. Good team. Maybe I wasn't the right person. Maybe I didn't talk enough. I did go to the shop a lot. Maybe that probably wasn't the right thing to do. Got to see a lot of things, and I did take the guys out to lunch a lot. And I think they weren't used to that. They weren't used to having a driver come to the shop. And I'm very homey. I'm very into things, and sometimes you get in trouble with that. Maybe you do need to get out of it and let them take care of those things, and then just show up and do your stuff. But it's very hands-on. We had great runs, super runs, and just had terrible luck. Just whether it was me or whether it was somebody else, or malfunctions, tire blowings, 10-cent part break-ins, I don't know. But we had good runs. I mean, like I said, when we won in Atlanta the following year, we led a lot of laps, and I think I had a 13-second lead with a lap to go, and we ran out of gas. And then we go to Sonoma with the Petties, and we led the last 15 laps with an 8-second lead, and we broke a rear end gear, taking the white flag.
I remember that.
So
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
racing.
I remember that.
and Coca-Cola. Even at Charlotte, we had such a great run there in the Coast Guard car that year, and I think it was 2000 or 2001, and we led a lot of like 178 laps, and then it got rain. It rained out. We were winning the race. It was raining, and I stopped for like an hour, and I dropped a cylinder once I started the car back up to take the green flag because we still had like 40 laps to go.
That's racing.
So,
Yep.
yeah, it would have been nice if they would have called it. Then I would have had 2 wins.
There you go. So you obviously mentioned kind of bouncing around in 02. And 2003, you took over the 01 USA Army Pontiac for MB2 Motorsports, obviously a season that was overshadowed by your injury. Tell us, obviously it ended your career, but tell us what you can recall from the time around the accident and maybe, what how that accident has, changed you.
Toast and oatmeal. That's like the only thing I remember that day. Having breakfast. I remember the toast, oatmeal, banana. But I don't remember anything of the day of the accident. Sad to say. I know. I recall when people tell me things, and I kind of recall it, but I don't recall it. Some people were telling me that I didn't want to race, I didn't want to practice because we were so fast. We were really good. I think we were second fastest. And, we started doing things and we changed shocks and, me, I'm a very gung. I don't know when to stop sometimes, and I think sometimes that hurt me in my career. I just, sometimes I just need to not be on the run all the time and just pace myself. And I think we changed shocks. We went back out, and then I busted my butt. And I woke up, 20, 21, 22 days later. And that's it. I don't really recall a lot after I woke up either. I don't, I was kind of in and out. And then they transferred me over to Charlotte like a month later, and I did some rehabs in Charlotte for a while. So, yeah, I'm fortunate, but good thing is I'm still here and carrying on with life.
Absolutely.
So you being from the Northeast, like us, so I was just, wondering, would you ever, own maybe a SK modified or maybe run up here at Stafford or anything like that? Or, any SRX? No interest. No, really. Just because I know myself, and I think, I'm a kind of an adrenaline daredevil driver. I love taking chances. I love going fast, and I think, I've had a lot of hits in my life, and I think, that might have helped my career, and it might have hurt my career. Your brain can only take so many hits, and I think it happens in a lot of sports. Whether it's football or boxing. I can list probably 7 or 8 concussions. From the time I was 7 years old. So. That's crazy.
Your body can only take so much, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I had a great life. I loved everything about it. I just wish that my computer up top was a bit better, a bit more, a bit tighter. But I think I wouldn't have changed anything. I just, In some cases, when you get to the top level, you have to be really prepared. And, maybe I wasn't so much prepared. In some cases I got a shot with, the best team out there and, did the best I can do. But, some people are made for that and some aren't. And I think, my shoes, I think I would have been better if I had a $15 or $20 million deal to go with a team like Melling, a Grow team, or even the team that I was with the Army. I mean, that with Jay Fry, I love Jay Fry to death, and he was a great team owner, great guy, great lead. Nelson Bowers, all the guys on the team. You know, we're just starting to come along. It was a brand new team. We were teammates with Johnny Benton, and we finished fourth at I think it was Texas, and then we finished ninth or 10th at California. Then we get to Richmond, and we're one of the fastest cars there. There's one thing I do remember, though, which is a couple weeks before Richmond, we went to Lowe's Motor Speedway, and we were the fastest car by 2/10. I think Jimmy Johnson was second fastest, and we were so fast that we were so excited to go back there for the 600, but unfortunately I got hurt, early in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking with Jerry Nadeau, former NASCAR Cup Series driver. Jerry, it's been a wonderful conversation, and we really, really appreciate all your time here on the show tonight.
Yes, thank you.
The final question we ask all our guests, when it's all said and done, time's over, how do you, Jerry Nadeau, want to be remembered to the NASCAR fan?
A go-getter. I don't know. I took a lot of chances. I was kind of on the edge at times. But really just a good, honest racer. I mean, somebody that gave it his all every time he was out on the track. That's how I think that's how I'd like to be remembered as.
Excellent. Jerry Nadeau joining us here on Miles on Motorsports tonight. A great conversation. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to step aside, take a break. We'll thank all our sponsors on the other side of the break. You're listening to Miles on Motorsports right here on 95.9 WATD.